All right. Well, if you are not familiar with our content, we'd like to do a little recap before we dive into our episode discussion. And then we like to peel that recap out and post it as its own separate video before we dive into our thoughts and reactions. And so if you're watching just that recap, click the link down below to get our full thoughts on the ep. And we want to know what your thoughts were as well. So mosey over to that video and drop a comment on what you think of the episode. But as we mentioned, this is episode 103 of campaign 3 of Critical Role, Cages. And this episode, hang on, I lost track of my notes here. This episode opens up pretty much the majority of, well, really the first half is going to take place in Essek and Caleb's abode. And if you recall from the previous episode, Essek was preparing, getting all the things he needed to do this ritual for Laudna. And this is primarily the focus for the first half of this episode, is the ritual of tethering the soul anchor to Delilah and ideally making Laudna the master of Delilah and not the other way around. There are some comments from Matt and Essek explaining this is going to be a very difficult ritual. Essek asks if anyone has any kind of experience with essentially surgery, and Chetney's like, wood is kind of like that, so sure, I'd be a great fit for this. But they do chat about how his experience as a blood hunter with Hemocraft might actually make him a really good extra set of hands. There's also, through this ritual that happens, Matt essentially has each player offering basically one thing to the ritual to see if it helps or hurts the ritual. So Chetney, in Chetney's case, he's assisting with basically opening up the chest of Laudna, which we realize that Laudna can just open it at will, like separate her rib cage. And the idea is to take this soul anchor and place it into her chest, a la Iron Man style. So Chetney's doing that. Dorian is asked essentially to help keep track of these runes that are being scrawled and like doing a good job of like reading out these runes from a book. And I think Matt even said there was like a DC 25 on doing that, which he crushes. In fact, that is the theme of pretty much every person's role during this ritual, is everyone just completely essentially dominates their role, or at least beats the DC that Matt has set in what he's described as a very difficult ritual. While this ritual is happening, Delilah is waking up and essentially is like, you know, this is foolhardy. This isn't going to work. What are you doing? You know, you'll always belong to me. We have Fern basically giving a permanent guidance on everyone. And the long and short of it is we eventually get the scene transitions to basically the upside down nether whitestone, however you'd call it, with Delilah and Laudna opposed to one another and Imogen at her side, essentially trying to give that final push to overcome Delilah. I believe it was a wisdom saving throw from Laudna as the final roll. And she is successful, and Matt declares the ritual a success, declares it complete, and that Laudna now has enslaved her patron to do as she pleases. And gives like a really cool description of like an image of like a gym with Delilah like behind it, like pounding on it. But Laudna has the ability to siphon the energy she needs when she pleases to do like her warlock powers. There are questions around Laudna's physical state, if she's essentially any less undead, but she seems to still be herself. And then the party's like, well, that's a really big issue that we've resolved now. Like, what do we do next? The party decides that ultimately they should probably head back to the excavation site, but there are a couple of things to figure out. Namely, it's like, what do we do about this whole lewdness memory orb thing. Aura mentions that it's going to be very dangerous if this kind of information gets out. Like things are only going to get more chaotic from here. And Lodney even suggests that maybe they should all go get together and go meet with the gods, like track down the gods and have a meeting with them. Ultimately, that plan doesn't really quite go anywhere. And in this conversation, Breus actually takes to the defense of Asmodeus and is like, hey, Asmodeus is misunderstood. Like what we saw in the memory thing, that wasn't really quite what it was. In which everyone's kind of like, come on, dude, like really? There's also questions, by the way, of Breus's background. And I think he even let slip that he had been a member of the Platinum Dragon. And there's even like this back and forth with him and Essek on like, oh, we're both from the dynasty. Where are you from? And Breus gives like the classic, like, we moved around a lot, and rolls I think it was like a 33 on his deception check. But all that to say, I believe, and I apologize if this butts into your half because I don't quite remember, Essek looking at Ashton's head. Was that after the break?
Yeah, I think so.
So I won't get into that, but the only other detail that comes out, and I think it was this episode, was pictures of Essek's entourage, and Breus essentially revealing that the reason these dicks scrawled on the wall are so familiar is because they are very much like a certain goblin and tiefling who came to the Platinum Dragon's temple and essentially like tricked him into gaining entry and then like defaced the temple, which seems to be a callback to campaign 2. But all that to say, with the ritual complete, and before we finish up a couple other details, we actually go to break. And do you want to take it from there?
Yes, sir. Also, y'all, apologies reading from my phone. If you saw our recent Worlds Beyond number, same thing. But all right, so we pick up on the break with them basically completing their long rest. And the first thing that happens in the morning is Chetney puts on this scaled cloak that they found in Aor that basically form fits to him like a second skin. Like, so Chetney like essentially looks as if he has scales now. So they spend the first bit of the morning kind of messing with that and seeing how it works. And, can he go to the bathroom in it? And he can basically like will it to open. But there's a little bit of hijinks there. And he has essentially a second skin now that also doesn't provide disadvantage on stealth checks. It's said to be very quiet.
I feel like the first hour after the break was them like what else can this second skin do?
Yeah.
So anyway,
but let's go back to that real quick. But so they have their hijinks with that. And then Laudna actually brings out the necklace that she got from Aor that she snatched from that random corpse, if you'll recall. And we get that identified. And I actually didn't write down what it was called, but I think like Amulet of False Life or something like that.
Amulet of Cursed Life, I think.
Cursed Life.
I think False Life was the first version he gave. And then I think
that's right. Yeah.
Cursed Life, yeah.
So essentially what this is it's a necklace that when worn will absorb the first spell, like on a once per day cooldown, basically. The first spell it comes into contact with, it will like cancel out. A spell up to 5th level, that is. Meaning the person that's wearing it or somebody like in proximity to that person. And when that happens, all dead bodies in a 200-foot radius will raise up as zombies and attack the person wearing this necklace. So a very unique and interesting item. And they talk about, how they might like try to have some fun use cases for this. But for now, I don't think anybody puts this on. They then take the rest of the morning to discuss what the next plans should be. And, should they go meet up with Keyleth? What yada, yada, yada. But one thing Orm does is he pulls out the sending stone to Caleb and sends him a message and says, hey, we're at your house with Essek. We're probably going to go see Keyleth soon. Are you okay? And we actually do get a response from Caleb that says he is okay and he's glad that they met Essek. Ashton then asks Essek to take another look at their head and everything that's going on there. So the two of them quickly go to the laboratory and Essek does a little probing around. And I won't be able to do this justice, but Matt describes like this crazy, like chaotic, like situation as Essek is probing around in there. And essentially Essek says that you're something new that like I've never seen before. You're like a living being of Dunamis, and it's extremely exciting. He also calls him havoc with a pattern, something that shouldn't work but does, like you're a conundrum. And Essex says, I want to help you more. Hopefully, like later down the road, I can take another look. But he does give Ashton a marble, which is like a spell casting focus for Dunamancy. And he says, hey, if you ever feel like you're losing control, like use this to center yourself, and you can like it can help you contain that and you can control it. So mechanically, we're not sure what this is going to do, but it should help Ashton. So after that, everyone gathers back together, and Essek teleports them to the encampment in the Hellcat Valley, where Keyleth and all the others were. But when they arrive, they find themselves like in this crater, and like there's basically like chaos and destruction all around them. There's Vanguard soldiers they can see a little bit in the distance, Rylorans, those big like mounted creatures that they ride around, and even Gloamgut circling above in the skies. And they quickly piece together that the encampment has been overrun and destroyed. So Imogen quickly sends a message to Keyleth being like, hey, we're at the encampment. What happened? Are you okay? And Keyleth says, yes, I'm fine. We had, you know, some casualties, but we got who we could and we escaped to Vasselheim. And by the way, sorry for the Discord noises for those of you that are hearing those.
Yeah, sorry, I had to sneeze, so I muted myself. I apologize.
Oh no, no, you're good. I think I'm getting like messaged on Discord and I forgot to mute it beforehand. So
Yeah, sorry.
everyone's getting the phantom pings. But Keela says they're okay. We're at Vasselheim. And the crew is like, hey, or she tells everyone else is like, hey, Essek, get us out of here. And meanwhile, like it seems as if they might start to be noticed by some of these figures around. So Essek casts another teleport, and we're told that someone attempted to counterspell this. We're not sure who, but it failed. So the teleport is successful, and they teleport to Vasselheim. They arrive outside the gates of the city. So Imogen sends another message and says, like, hey, we're here. And Keyleth's like, I'm in a meeting right now, but you need to come join me. We're in the Platinum Sanctuary. And so they're like, okay. So Belzhel's approach the gates of Vasselheim. There's like a line of people trying to get in. There's a bunch of guards. And I am sorry, I'm just going to mute this real quick because somebody is spamming me right now. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so they approach the gates and basically tell the guards that the voice of the Tempest has sent for them and is expecting them. So the guard lets them in. They also ask him like where the Platinum Sanctuary is. He gives them some directions, and amidst that conversation, also mentions that the city's safe now, but we were having an issue with the dark bloom. And I forgot to mention that Orem, as they arrive here, could smell like the scent of burning bodies on the air. So I think they ask the guard, like, what's up with that? And he says, it was the dark bloom, but the city's safe now. And as Belzhel's look in, one of the main things that they see is this massive primordial titan just in the city. Like it has become a structure for Vasselheim. So they make their way through the city, past the Titan, past a temple to the Matron of Ravens. Chetney at one point asks a guard, hey, what's the dark bloom, by the way? And he reveals that when the solstice happened, for one reason or another, all of these corpses beneath Vasselheim in their catacombs like sprung to life and started attacking the city. So they've had to like fight against waves and waves of undead, and that's why they're burning those corpses. So they continue. They eventually arrive at the Platinum Sanctuary after like climbing up this mountain and arrive at the meeting. Just before they enter, though, they're seeing a bunch of the banners outside of like the parties that are represented within this meeting. One of whom is the Dynasty. And when Essex sees that, he's like, "Peace, I'm out. Like, Rodin's here for me." And so they part ways, say their goodbyes and their thank yous, and Essex leaves. The rest of Bell's Hells enter the chamber, and it's this massively crowded, like chamber. They can't even tell how many people are in, so they're just trying to push their way through, with Orem leading the way, mounted on Fern's shoulder. And as they're going, they eventually get stopped by like this massive, massive gauntleted hand, which we come to find out is Grog Stonejaw, who is like, "Yep, no further. Like, I don't know who you are. You're not allowed past here." And they're like, "Hey, we know the voice of the Tempest," and he's like, "Nah, I know the voice of the Tempest, and I don't know you." And so they're having this back and forth, but then Pike runs along and is like, "Hey, no, Grog, like I know them, they're cool, like let them in." And Grog's like, "Okay, yeah, sorry." And Grog like makes way for them, which kind of causes a little bit of commotion. And they arrive in the middle where this like meeting chamber is taking place, and all heads basically turn to look at these people that have just arrived. And Matt describes, I don't know if he said how many chairs there were, but like basically the focus of this meeting are these people in chairs. And represented here are all of the heads of the temples of Vasselheim, like the religious heads. Cord is mentioned, the Storm Lord, and then we also have several little like cameos. We've got Allura and Kima. Keyleth is obviously here. Um, a figure that's described as dark, gender fluid, dark eyes, who I believe to be Jaman Sa'ord, which we'll probably talk about in the discussion a little bit. We also have the Bright Queen, the leader of the dynasty. And yeah, basically all of these heads turn to Bell's Hells as they arrive, and that is where the episode ends. Again, episode 103, Cages. And if you're just watching our recap, be sure to check out our full discussion, which will be linked down in the description below.